Formula Cura X review. They're bloody amazing. I just feel a little bit sorry for them that everyone ignores the poor things because they've only got 2 pistons and everybody wants 4 pistons. They're great and definitely overlooked. So I wanted to buy a normal pair of Curas to replace the codes on the Supreme. On Bike 24, the normal Cura is only €118 each, which seems like a pretty good price to me for one decent, pretty high-end brake. They're machined in Taiwan and assembled in Italy, but the normal Curas are out of stock everywhere. But the Cura X was in stock. It is described as a lightweight, high-end disc brake for cross-country or XC race. The Cura X comes in at €205 per brake, which is mainly you paying for the carbon lever upgrade and the Kevlar hose. A 2-piston brake for riding downhill? Surely not. As far as I can tell, the Cura was the last brake to win a downhill World Cup with only 2 pistons back in 2017, being ridden under Finn Isles. Okay, so it was only a junior World Cup, but Loic Bruni was also using these brakes for a while and didn't seem to slow him down. Pun intended. So I reviewed these for Pink Bike. I reread my review. It's very positive. And also on Enduro Mag, probably the best brake review online anywhere, done by Trev Worsey for AstonMTB Mag, the German guys. It's the only time I've seen any lab data for brakes, which is quite interesting. The Cura was one of the best brakes on their test, and it did win best value, and the Code RSC won best overall brake, and they were testing them for trail enduro riding. Really good test with power meter readings from a dyno and star ratings for different things, value, modulation, all that stuff. Best review online. But if you actually count the number of stars and check the power readings, it looks to me like the Magura MT7 actually won that test according to their data, followed by the Cura and then the Code RSC. The Cura was arguably second or third best, and nearly all the other brakes in that review had 4 pistons and these had 2 pistons. The Kevlar hose should be much more impact resistant than a normal hose. There isn't actually any information on Formula's website that I can find about this. I've said this a load of times. I don't think normal plastic brake hoses should be used on mountain bikes. I always try to choose the braided steel hose, like with Hope brakes, the toughest hose possible. Because it doesn't happen often, but I've seen enough times brake hoses get cut or split. People crash, the hose gets crushed between the frame and the fork stanchion, ripped out, or a rock flies up and hits it underneath the bottom bracket area, splits the hose. And it doesn't happen often, but your life literally depends on the tiny amount of oil running through these tiny little 4 or 5 mil thick hoses, and inside it's 1 or 2 millimeters diameter. Tiny amount of oil, and your life can literally depend on it. Get the toughest hoses you can. Stainless steel could actually save your life. I went for the polished version on the Commensal. Really nice finish, polished chrome, silver. The carbon lever does add a bit of bling if you're into that kind of thing. Myself, I don't really care about what they look like or the weight. I wouldn't pay extra for the carbon lever normally. I don't see the point. I'm sure when I crash and smash it into a rock, then I'm not going to last very long. So yeah, personally I wouldn't spend my extra money on them, but they were in stock. The carbon lever does feel pretty nice. It's a bit warmer maybe in cold weather, and does just seem to have a bit of a softer, more damped feel. Arguably, yeah, super nice lever shape anyway. It's maybe a little bit smooth, too polished compared to the shot peened alloy version, but I've done the normal little trick, a bit of grip tape on the lever to improve your grip and sensitivity. Obviously I complain about everything. The carbon lever is a little bit rattly on this junction connection here. But positive, the tool-free lever adjust. I can actually adjust on all these brakes with my fingers. Whereas the set I reviewed for Pink Bike years ago, and in all the other reviews I've read, you couldn't actually turn them by hand, it was way too stiff. You put in a 2mm or 2.5mm Allen key to turn them, and it's a bit awkward between the grip and the lever. But this one's, all these, you can actually turn them easily. So I don't know if that's been fixed or if it was a problem on the first ones. But yeah, tool-free adjustment works great. The lever feel is fantastic, super light, really good shape, definitely perfectly in line with my fingers and the path your fingers moving on as you pull the brake. It's great. A lot of people will have bent mountain bike brake lever fingers from braking too much over years, fingers pointing out this way. I think that's from a lot of brakes, that the lever ergonomics aren't perfect and it's sort of pulling your finger across. So if you're an old mountain biker who's been riding a long time, see if your fingers are bent like mine from braking too much. So the brakes came with no rotors, €205 each, no rotor. Went for these big fat Cura bad boys. Now a couple of people already messaged me about these and said decide to vibrate or rattle a little bit on the rivets, but they've been fine so far. I haven't had that problem myself. There is a slight rocking feeling if you hold the bike when stationary and move backwards and forwards, a little bit like if you have centre lock or some brake pads that move a bit in the caliper. I don't really find this a problem. I'm never really worried about that, because when you're riding, the rotor's always going forwards, so everything sort of moves to one end of the play. If I was trials riding, I wouldn't want to use these rotors, because if you're trials riding and you've got the brake locked and rocking backwards and forwards, that probably could get a little bit annoying, but on the trail that's never bothered me myself. But I did choose these because they are 220mm for heat dissipation. They're extra thick e-bike rotors, the 2.25mm thick, and they've got the alloy spider, which I'm not sure if this is for heat management or if these blocks help to brace the steel part of the rotor against the alloy part. I guess it's lighter, but also the alloy is a lot thicker, so it should be stronger and stay straighter for longer, hopefully. A stiffer rotor, if you do manage to bend it, it's going to be more difficult to straighten it, but hopefully it shouldn't bend as much. I find with normal 1.8mm rotors, you can have them perfectly straight, a few runs on a downhill track and they'll be touching the pads again, so hopefully these will avoid that. And also the thicker disc should hopefully reduce the lever throw, so I like to have the minimum possible amount of movement from when the lever is fully extended to when it hits the pads. I like that to be as low as possible, because I try to ride with my fingers off the brakes, literally off the brakes as much as possible, and then just pull them. So I try to ride with my fingers off the lever like this and then pull it on, off, on, off. I don't like to ride holding it in the travel, which is what I used to do, and a lot of people do, but then you're more likely to drag. This way it's on or off. Brake pads, trick stuff, power pads. These are really good. These must be the best brake pads on the market. I think in the Enduro MTB review that I mentioned, they also use these pads. And I think they said it gave an average of 18% power. Standard pads. No noises, no squeaking. The only noise is the noise of them like tearing into the disc rotor as it creates friction. That is noticeable. But that's a good noise to hear, in my opinion. That's the noise you want to hear from your brakes. If your brakes are making no noise, they're probably not working very well. If you can hear the pads like tearing into the rotors, you're probably slowing down pretty well, which is the goal. On the back of this bike, they did about 6 days riding in some proper alpine bike parks: Morzine, Morjan, Verbier, Viola St. Gris, and it looks like the rear ones have worn about 50% in 6 days. So that's pretty good for a super high performance, high power, organic pad. No wet weather performance to comment on yet, because it's been super dry and I avoid the rain like the plague. I've done my time in the UK riding in the mud, and in Morzine in the mud, so I've avoided the rain, but this weekend we might get some rain. Talking of pads, Formula made a new brake, but they didn't make up another slightly different pad shape to annoy anyone who works in the bike shop, or to make it impossible to buy pads when you desperately need them in a mountain resort or in a bike park in the middle of nowhere. They just use the old pad design, which are backwards compatible with all 2-piston Formula brakes. The R1, the RO, T1, CR3, RX, Cura, easy. I don't know why there's so many different types of brake pads. This is something that annoys me with bikes. There's like hundreds of different types and they're all nearly the same. I don't really know what difference it makes if the pad's a different shape or tiny, slightly different size. It just makes life really difficult, complicated. But mountain bikes are incredibly complicated. Yeah, this combination together, the power pads, the big rotors, the brakes, power is just massive, absolutely massive. It must be one of the most powerful brakes I've ever used. It's huge. And it's all usable power. So the initial modulation on these, maybe not the best. They're pretty sharp to start with. Going to say a bit more like a Shimano Saint than a Code, somewhere in between the two. When you're on long steep sections where you're like continuously pulling the brake, but you are still adjusting the amount of power you're feeding in to balance the bike or to keep the wheels from locking up. It's really easy to modulate the power there. But yeah, they are a bit sharp. If you like a really sharp brake, this setup's probably one of the best you can buy. It's pretty impressive. Heat management, no problems at all. General riding, no problems. Doing full runs in Morjan, then the red trail into the black trail, I couldn't really get them to overheat at all. This track, if anyone knows Morjan, a lot of you Brit guys will know Morjan. Burmy red track at the top, pretty fast, probably dragging the brakes around all the corners instead of braking before them and letting off. You get a lot of heat in the brakes there, and then you head into the black run, which just gets steeper. And this must be one of the longest continuous steep bits of track anywhere in the world, official tracks at least. People are going to split hairs on this. Champrey's steeper, this is steeper, Goat's Gully's steeper, but this is one of the best brake tests in the world. Bloody long and it's bloody steep and you're on the brakes a lot, just trying to slow down to stay alive. And the rear brake would last all the way to the bottom with full bite. There might have been a little point when the pads maybe started to melt a little bit, but when I came out onto the road at the bottom of the track, tarmac, tons of grip, I could still easily skid the back wheel, just one finger, and not pulling them very hard. Fantastic, like maybe 5 to 6 minutes of riding. Getting continually steeper, no fade, no noise. Did this 3 times in a row, the same every time. The only thing I could find was, and they are sort of rainbow coloured from getting super hot, and there was some black residue, but that's gone now. That could have been the brake starting to melt and it was black brake dirt residue. The rest of the time, the rotors have just been super polished, super clean all the time. Looks great. The lever point does change slightly if it's been on the wall or on the chairlift. But generally, they're always the same, and we've bled them 3 times now, I think, to double check. They're bled perfectly. You put it on the lift, they might pull back to the bar a bit more, but they will pump up really quickly back to normal, a couple of pulls. And then sometimes they do slightly go out as they get warm, which is not perfect, but I much prefer if the levers are getting out further than coming into the bar. It just feels safer than if they're getting closer to the bar. My only real problem with them is the rear one's just too powerful, too sharp. When I've been riding this bike continuously, I do get used to them, and if the grip's good. But swapping between bikes often, or loose surfaces, I'm a bit trigger happy on the lever. But if it was one brake, using them all the time, I think I'll get used to them, they'll be fine. Or I definitely don't need the 220 rotor on the back. The heat was fine, I could easily run 200. Power is a bit too much with the power pads and the 220, so I could downgrade the rotor to 200 and avoid having a stupid plus 20 brake mount. And this weekend we're going to run the sintered pads on the rear, which should calm the power down as well. But there's so much power, so much good heat management anyway that it's fine. We can definitely downgrade in this situation. And the sintered pads should last longer, so all good. What would I recommend? If you're a big heavy rider, wanted to do downhill, power pads front and rear, 220mm rotors front and rear on a 29er. If you've got smaller wheels or you're a bit lighter, or you're riding enduro, 200s, 180, 180s will be fine. My previous pink bike review, I ran 180mm rotors front and rear in Finale, never had any problems. Bloody great, love these brakes. Problems. On one of the brakes from new, this hose connection here was insanely tight. We didn't film it, but the 8mm or 10mm wrench on it, it was like twisting the whole master cylinder nearly, trying to crack it open. Then it did crack open, really, really tight. And then we couldn't get the hose out of the lever because it must have just been compressed in way too hard. And the reason we were doing that was that only had rear in stock with the extra long hoses. So at the time we were in Morzine in the car park. We just left the hose on, ravelled up just for safety. We didn't want to ruin anything in the car park and not be able to ride, so we left it until we came home, and then it was a two-man job to get it out. Fucking bikes, man. That was definitely on tight, wasn't it? Big job, definitely over tightened. Hopefully that's not happened on any more of these. Like I said, there was a bit of pump up on the levers. It didn't really faze me at all. It's still better than pulling back to the bar when it gets too hot. And the only other issue, which isn't an issue on any of my bikes, is just the caliper hose connection is like locked in one angle, which on these bikes absolutely fine, but if you do need an extreme angle change of the hose, you might struggle to get it looking pretty or get it as flush as you would like. Why didn't I buy the 4-piston version? 2 reasons. Can't find any in stock anywhere. Second reason, I had 3 pairs of these 2 years ago in the summer on demo bikes when I was doing demo rides with people. Every single one had sticky pistons. You could clean them before you go for a ride, push the pistons in, clean them, drip a bit of oil if it was super dry, pump the pistons back, out, in, out, get them working perfectly, line everything up. Half a day, 1 day riding, all off to one side. With every single one, 6 brakes, same. I don't know if I was just unlucky, if this has been fixed or what, but again, go back, read my review on Pink Bike. I said they were great brakes then. I still think they're great brakes now. They've easily got enough power. The power readings on EnduroMag prove it. I don't know, all the other reviews say they're great. I think they've become an overlooked brake just because they've got 2 pistons instead of 4. Raffle time! Woo! So I made a pretty big loss on the Canyon Sender raffle. I'm really stoked on it. Everything's getting better. Views are going up. Positive feedback's going up. The number of people buying tickets going up. The total amount of tickets bought up. The total value of the tickets up. Everything's great. Everything's building up. In the short term, I'm not going to risk losing loads more money on a bike. So I bought 3 pairs of Formula Cura X. So I'm going to try and do some smaller raffles, build up my following, hopefully not lose any more money, because that was a bit of a kick in the balls. Even though I was really happy with it, it would have been nice to break even, not spend a month of risk and time and energy and work losing a couple of grand. But we're moving on, we're moving forwards. So I've ordered polished standard black, gold, 3 pairs, one of each colour. They've all got the carbon levers. They're all rear with they're all rear, Kevlar hoses, so they should fit any bike however long your cables need to be. 6 pairs of trick stuff pads, 2 20mm Magura MDRP rotors, 2 220s, 2 180s, which are pretty cute. I didn't have any 200 in stock to match, but to go with the brake pads, trick stuff Dackley, and these are the HD heavy duty. These are 2mm thick, these are 203mm, and these should be a really good disc. And they even have the 60-degree chamfer on the rotor, which makes it a lot easier to slot the disc into the caliper when you're putting your wheels on. That's a nice touch. And all the rotors are about the same price, that's why I chose these to make it fair. The raffle, first place wins choice of 3 colours. You can choose any matching pair of brakes, gold, silver, black. You can also choose the rotors you want, any combination of rotors, 200, 180, 220, whichever. And you get 2 sets of brake pads included. The second place winner will win the second choice of colours, so he gets to choose between the remaining 2 colours and whichever discs are left over, and again 2 pairs of pads. Third place wins Buck package from Misspent Summers, a trail map from trailmaps.co.uk, and some socks from Can't Quit Cartel. Great guys, all of those brands, love those guys. Thanks for the support from them from the start, from day one. The remaining third pair are going to go on my Norco. The silver or the gold ones look pretty good on the Norco, so I'm hopefully going to end up with one of those pairs left, and hopefully suitable rotors, but if not, we'll see. Head to the link in the description, go to my Instagram page, follow the link in bio there. You can buy tickets on raffle, you can make a donation through Coffee or Linktree directly. Please like, share, subscribe. We want to build this independent bike review channel. I still think these are the only completely independent reviews. The next best thing I can find is Blister, which won't take any money from brands, but they do get their products free. The difference here is I bought all these products online, full retail price, whatever price they're on the store. So yeah, let's keep it moving. Fantastic.